The sound of shattering glass jolted me from my daydream. I rushed to the kitchen, my heart pounding, only to find Jack sheepishly sweeping up the remains of my favorite vase. "Emma, I'm so sorry," he said, his charming smile already working its magic. I was reaching for the good wine glasses, and my elbow just... I waved away his apology, bending down to help. "It's fine, Jack. Accidents happen." As we cleaned up together, I couldn't help but marvel at how seamlessly we worked as a team. 15 years of marriage had honed our ability to anticipate each other's movements, to communicate without words. It was moments like these that reminded me why I fell in love with Jack in the first place. "What's the occasion?" I asked, nodding towards the wine glasses he'd been reaching for. "Can't a man surprise his beautiful wife with a romantic evening?" Jack winked, pulling me close for a kiss. I melted into his embrace, savoring the familiar scent of his cologne. "Well, Mr. Romantic, I hope you remembered to pick up groceries for dinner." Jack's face fell. "I knew I forgot something. How about we order in instead? That new Italian place downtown?" I laughed, shaking my head. "You're lucky you're cute. I'll call them now." As I dialed the restaurant, Jack disappeared upstairs to change. I heard the ping of his phone from the counter and glanced over, expecting to see a work email. Instead, my blood ran cold as I read the notification. "New match on Discreet Meats. Sarah, 28, is interested in you." My hand trembled as I set down the phone. Discreet Meats? Wasn't that the app for married people looking to... No, there had to be some mistake. "Hey, honey," Jack called from upstairs. "Have you seen my blue tie?" I swallowed hard, forcing my voice to remain steady. "Check the back of the closet door." As I waited for Jack to come back downstairs, my mind raced. Should I confront him? Maybe it was just spam or a mistake. But deep down, a nagging voice whispered that this explained so much. The late nights at work, the sudden business trips, the way he guarded his phone. Jack bounded down the stairs, looking dashing in his crisp white shirt and that blue tie I loved so much. "How do I look?" he asked, striking a pose. I plastered on a smile, determined not to let on what I'd seen. "Not yet." "Handsome as ever," I replied, my voice only slightly strained. As we sat down to our takeout dinner, candles flickering between us, I couldn't shake the feeling that everything was about to change. Jack regaled me with stories from work, his eyes twinkling in the candlelight, and I found myself searching his face for any sign of deception. "Emma?" Jack's voice cut through my thoughts. "You seem distracted. Everything okay?" I met his gaze, seeing nothing but concern in those familiar blue eyes. "Just tired," I lied, reaching for my wine glass. "Tell me more about that new client of yours." As Jack launched into another anecdote, I made a mental note to call Millie first thing in the morning. If anyone could help me make sense of this, it was my best friend. But for now, I'd play along, savoring what might be the last moments of blissful ignorance in my marriage. The evening wore on, a bittersweet dance of laughter and secret fears, and as I lay awake that night, listening to Jack's steady breathing beside me, I couldn't shake the feeling that our perfect life was nothing more than a beautiful illusion, ready to shatter at any moment. I paced the length of Millie's cozy living room, my hands shaking as I clutched my phone. "I just can't believe it, Mill. Jack? Our Jack?" Millie watched me from her armchair, her brow furrowed with concern. "Honey, slow down. Tell me exactly what you saw." I took a deep breath and sank onto the sofa. It was a notification from some app called Discreet Meats. Something about a new match being interested in him. "Millie, it's for married people looking to... "Oh, Emma." Millie's voice was soft, sympathetic. "Are you sure it wasn't just spam? Or maybe someone signed him up as a prank?" I shook my head vehemently. "I wish. But it explains so much. The late nights, the secretive phone calls. Last week, he even had lipstick on his collar. He claimed it was from greeting a client, but now..." Millie leaned forward, her eyes serious. "Emma, listen to me. Before you do anything drastic, you need more evidence. Have you tried talking to Jack about it?" The thought made my stomach churn. "I can't. What if I'm wrong? What if I'm not? I don't know which would be worse." "Okay, here's what we're going to do." Millie's voice took on that no-nonsense tone I loved her for. "First, you're going to take a deep breath. Good. Now we're going to approach this logically. You need to gather more information before confronting Jack." I nodded, feeling a glimmer of hope. "What do you suggest?" "Start paying closer attention to his behavior. Note any inconsistencies in his stories, any unexplained absences. But Emma, she fixed me with a stern look, don't go snooping through his things or hacking his phone. That's a line you can't uncross. I won't, I promised, even as a part of me itched to grab Jack's phone and uncover the truth. Just then my own phone buzzed. It was a text from Jack. Working late tonight, don't wait up, love you. I showed Millie the message, my heart sinking. See, it's already starting. Millie squeezed my hand. Remember, patience and observation. Don't jump to conclusions yet. I left Millie's house feeling both comforted and more anxious than ever. As I drove home, my mind raced with possibilities. What if Jack really was cheating? Could I forgive him? Did I even want to? The house felt empty when I arrived, Jack's absence a palpable thing. I wandered from room to room, seeing our life together with new eyes. The photos on the mantel, the mingled clothes in the laundry basket, all of it seemed like props in a play I no longer recognized. In the kitchen, I noticed Jack's briefcase sitting on the counter. He must have forgotten it in his rush to wherever he really was tonight. My fingers itched to open it, to search for any clue that might confirm or deny my suspicions. Don't go snooping through his things, Millie's voice echoed in my head. I turned away from the briefcase, only to find myself face to face with our wedding photo. Jack's smile beamed out at me, full of love and promise. How could that man be the same one who was potentially betraying me now? The sound of a car in the driveway jolted me from my thoughts. I glanced at the clock, barely 9 p.m. So much for working late. I heard Jack's key in the lock and quickly composed myself, determined to follow Millie's advice. Observe, don't accuse. Emma? Jack called out, his voice carrying a note of surprise. I thought you'd be in bed by now. I stepped into the hallway, forcing a smile. Just catching up on some reading. How was work? Jack's eyes darted away for a split second before meeting mine. Oh, the usual chaos. As he leaned in to kiss me, I caught a whiff of unfamiliar perfume. My heart clenched, but I kept my face neutral. You forgot your briefcase, I said, gesturing to the kitchen. Oh, thanks for reminding me. I have some important papers in there for tomorrow's meeting. As Jack retrieved his briefcase, I watched him closely. Was that guilt in the set of his shoulders, or was I seeing what I feared most? One thing was certain. I couldn't live like this for long. Something had to give, and soon. The weeks crawled by, each day a torturous exercise in restraint as I watched Jack's behavior with growing suspicion. His late nights became more frequent, his excuses more elaborate. The distance between us grew, a chasm I didn't know how to bridge. One evening, as I was folding laundry, a crumpled receipt fell from Jack's pocket. My heart raced as I smoothed it out, revealing a charge for an expensive restaurant downtown, on a night he'd claimed to be working late. I confronted him as soon as he walked through the door. Jack, we need to talk. He froze, his smile faltering. What's wrong, Emma? I held up the receipt, my hand trembling. Can you explain this? Jack's eyes widened for a moment before he composed himself. Oh, that. It was a business dinner with a client. I forgot to mention it. A client? I pressed, my voice rising. On a Saturday night? At Le Petit Chateau? He shrugged, avoiding my gaze. It was last minute. The client insisted. Stop lying to me, Jack. The words burst out before I could stop them. I know about discreet meets. I know you've been sneaking around. Just tell me the truth. Jack's face paled. Emma, I can explain. Then explain. I shouted, tears stinging my eyes. Explain why you're never home, why you smell like someone else's perfume, why you're always on your phone. Jack reached for me, but I stepped back. It's not what you think, he pleaded. I'm not having an affair. Then what is it? I demanded. Because from where I'm standing, it sure looks like one. Jack ran a hand through his hair, his composure cracking. I can't tell you, not yet, but I promise I'm not cheating on you. I stared at him, searching his face for any sign of the man I married. That's not good enough, Jack. I need the truth. Emma, please, he begged. Just trust me. I love you. I would never betray you like that. But the seed of doubt had taken root, and no amount of pleading could dislodge it. I turned away, unable to look at him anymore. I think you should sleep in the guest room tonight. As I lay awake that night, Jack's words echoed in my mind. What could be so important that he'd risk our marriage to keep it secret? Part of me wanted to believe him, to trust that there was a reasonable explanation for everything. but the evidence was mounting and my patience was wearing thin. The next morning, I called Millie. I confronted him, I said as soon as she picked up. "Oh, honey, how did it go?" I recounted the conversation, my voice breaking as I reached the end. "He swears he's not cheating, Mill, but he won't tell me what's really going on." Millie was quiet for a moment. "Emma, I hate to say this, but maybe it's time to do some digging of your own." "What do you mean?" "I mean, if Jack won't give you answers, maybe you need to find them yourself. Check his phone, his email. Follow him if you have to." I hesitated, remembering Millie's earlier advice against snooping. "Are you sure?" "At this point, what do you have to lose?" Millie's voice was gentle but firm. "You deserve the truth, Emma, one way or another." As I hung up, a plan began to form in my mind. Jack had a business dinner scheduled for tomorrow night. Instead of staying home, wondering and worrying, I would follow him. I'd see for myself what or who was so important that he'd risk everything we'd built together. My hands shook as I made the decision, but there was no turning back now. Tomorrow night, I'd finally get the answers I needed, even if they shattered my world in the process. My heart pounded as I trailed Jack's car through the quiet suburban streets. I'd told him I was having dinner with Millie, and he'd barely looked up from his phone as he mumbled goodbye. Now, as the sun dipped below the horizon, I watched him pull into the driveway of a modest 2-story house. I parked a few houses down, my hands shaking as I cut the engine. What was I doing? This wasn't me. I didn't spy on people, didn't sneak around in the shadows. But then again, I never thought I'd be in this position. Jack got out of his car, straightening his tie as he walked to the front door. He didn't knock, just let himself in like he belonged there. The casual familiarity of the action made my stomach churn. I waited, counting the seconds, before I crept closer. The curtains were drawn, but a warm light spilled out from between them. I edged around to the side of the house, looking for any glimpse of what was happening inside. There, a gap in the kitchen curtains. I peered in, my breath catching in my throat. Jack stood at the counter, laughing as he poured wine into 2 glasses. And then she appeared. She was young, probably mid-20s, with long blonde hair and a smile that lit up her whole face. As I watched, she wrapped her arms around Jack's waist, pressing a kiss to his cheek. The wineglass slipped from Jack's hand, shattering on the floor. But neither of them seemed to notice. They were too wrapped up in each other, sharing a private joke as Jack brushed a strand of hair from her face. I stumbled back, bile rising in my throat. All of it. Every suspicion, every fear, confirmed in an instant. I don't remember getting back to my car. I don't remember the drive home. But suddenly I was there, sitting in our driveway, staring at the house we'd built our life in. How could I go back inside? How could I ever sleep in our bed again, knowing what I knew? Hours passed. I sat there numb as the neighborhood grew dark and quiet around me. And then, headlights. Jack's car pulling in behind mine. He got out, surprise etched on his face. "Emma, what are you doing out here? I thought you were with Millie." The sound of his voice, so normal, so concerned, snapped something inside me. I was out of the car in an instant, my voice a strangled cry. "How could you?" Jack froze, his eyes widening. "Emma, what?" "I saw you," I shouted, not caring who might hear. "I saw you with her, in that house. How long, Jack? How long have you been lying to me?" The color drained from his face. "Emma, please, it's not what you think. I can explain." "Explain?" I laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. "Explain how you've been sneaking around behind my back? Explain how you've been making a fool of me?" "Go ahead, Jack. I'm all ears." He reached for me, but I jerked away. "Don't touch me," I hissed. "Don't you dare touch me." "Emma, please," he begged. "Just let me explain. It's complicated. I'm not cheating on you." I stared at him, searching for any trace of the man I thought I knew. "Then who is she, Jack? Why were you at her house? Why have you been lying to me for weeks?" Jack's shoulders slumped. He looked defeated, older, somehow. "Her name is Sarah," he said quietly. "And she's my daughter." The world tilted on its axis. I gripped the car door for support, my mind reeling. "Your daughter? What are you talking about?" Jack took a deep breath. "It was before we met. A college relationship. I didn't know. I only found out a few months ago. I've been trying to figure out how to tell you." I shook my head, unable to process what I was hearing. "Why didn't you just tell me the truth?" I was scared, Jack admitted. Scared of how you'd react. Scared of changing our life together. I know I handled it all wrong, Emma. I'm so sorry. As the adrenaline faded, exhaustion set in. I felt hollowed out, empty. I need time, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. I need to think. I brushed past Jack, heading for the house, but as I reached the door, I turned back. No more lies. Jack, no more secrets. If we have any chance of getting through this, I need the whole truth. All of it. He nodded, his eyes brimming with unshed tears. I promise, Emma. No more secrets. As I closed the bedroom door behind me, I wondered if any promise could rebuild the trust we'd lost. Only time would tell. The days following Jack's revelation about Sarah were a blur of confusion and hurt. I oscillated between anger at his deception and sympathy for the complicated situation he found himself in. But despite his promises of honesty, something still felt off. That's when I decided to reach out to Benjamin, Jack's uncle. If anyone could offer an unbiased perspective, it would be him. We met at a quiet cafe, away from prying eyes. Benjamin's kind face creased with concern as I poured out the whole story. Emma, dear, he said, patting my hand. I'm so sorry you're going through this. But I have to ask, are you certain Jack is telling you everything now? I blinked, surprised. What do you mean? Benjamin sighed. Jack's always been complicated. Even as a boy, he had a knack for bending the truth to suit his needs. I'm not saying he's lying about Sarah, but there might be more to the story. My stomach churned. What should I do? If you really want the truth, you need concrete evidence, Benjamin advised. Have you considered hiring a private investigator? The idea had never crossed my mind, but now it took root. Isn't that a bit extreme? Benjamin's eyes were sad but determined. Sometimes extreme measures are necessary to uncover the truth. I can recommend someone discreet if you'd like. I left the cafe with a business card burning a hole in my pocket and a storm of emotions in my heart. Was I really considering this? That night, as Jack worked late again, I made the call. Within days, I had a folder full of information that made my head spin. Jack had been telling the truth about Sarah. She was indeed his daughter. But that wasn't all. The investigator had uncovered a web of lies so intricate it took my breath away. There were secret bank accounts, mysterious phone calls to numbers that didn't exist, and worst of all, evidence of other women. Not just Sarah's mother, but a string of affairs stretching back years. I sat on our bed, surrounded by damning photos and financial records, when I heard Jack's key in the lock. My heart pounded as his footsteps approached the bedroom. Emma? He called. Are you awake? I brought dinner. His voice trailed off as he entered the room, taking in the scene before him. The color drained from his face. What is all this? He whispered. I stood, my legs shaking. The truth, Jack. All of it. His eyes darted from the photos to my face, panic setting in. Emma, I can explain. No more explanations, I shouted, surprising even myself with the force of my anger. No more lies. I know everything, Jack. The affairs, the money, all of it. Jack stumbled back as if I'd struck him. How did you? It doesn't matter how. I cut him off. What matters is that you've been lying to me our entire marriage. Was any of it real? Did you ever actually love me? Tears streamed down Jack's face. Of course I love you, Emma. You're the best thing that ever happened to me. I messed up. I got scared and I made mistakes and then I didn't know how to fix it. I wanted to believe him. Part of me still loved him despite everything. But the trust was shattered, perhaps beyond repair. I need you to leave, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Pack a bag and go. I can't even look at you right now. Jack reached for me, but I stepped back. Please, Emma, give me a chance to make this right. We can go to counseling, work through this. I shook my head, feeling a strange calm settle over me. I don't know if we can work through this, Jack. I need time to think, to figure out what I want. And I can't do that with you here. As Jack slowly packed a bag, reality set in. Our marriage, our life together, it was all built on lies. Now I had to decide if there was anything left worth salvaging, or if it was time to walk away for good. The sound of the front door closing behind Jack echoed through the empty house, leaving me alone with the wreckage of our life and the daunting task of deciding what came next. The days after Jack left were a blur of sleepless nights and tear-stained pillows. I vacillated between rage and despair, unable to imagine a future without the man I'd built my life around. But as the initial shock wore off, A new emotion began to take root, a burning desire for justice. I called Millie, my voice hoarse from crying. I can't let him get away with this, Mill. He needs to face consequences. I hear you, honey, Millie said, her tone cautious. But what exactly did you have in mind? The plan formed as I spoke, fueled by years of pent-up frustration and betrayal. Lucy, Jack's mother, she needs to know the truth about her precious son. Millie's sharp intake of breath crackled through the phone. Emma, are you sure? That's a nuclear option if I ever heard one. I laughed bitterly. What do I have left to lose? Besides, Lucy deserves to know what kind of man she raised. The annual family barbecue at Lucy's house was just days away. It was perfect. The whole family would be there, including Jack. I spent the intervening time gathering my evidence, rehearsing what I'd say. As I pulled up to Lucy's sprawling suburban home, my hands shook on the steering wheel. This was it. No turning back now. Jack's car was already there, parked next to his sister's minivan. I smoothed my dress, checked my makeup in the rearview mirror, and stepped out, clutching my purse with its damning contents. Lucy answered the door, her stern face softening into a smile. Emma, dear, we were starting to worry. Come in, come in. The backyard was a scene of picturesque family bliss. Jack stood by the grill, laughing with his brother-in-law. He froze when he saw me, his eyes wide with panic. I plastered on a smile, making my rounds, exchanging pleasantries. All the while, my heart raced, knowing what was coming. Finally, Lucy called everyone to attention. Before we eat, I'd like to say a few words. This was my moment. I stepped forward, interrupting her. Actually, Lucy, if you don't mind, I have something I need to share with everyone. Lucy blinked, surprised, but nodded. All eyes turned to me. I took a deep breath. I've recently discovered some information about Jack that I think the family needs to know. Jack stepped forward, his face ashen. Emma, please. But I was beyond stopping now. I pulled out the photos, the bank statements, laying them on the picnic table for all to see. Jack has been unfaithful, I announced, my voice carrying across the suddenly silent yard. Not just once, but multiple times, over years. He's been lying to all of us, hiding money, living a double life. Gasps and murmurs rippled through the crowd. Lucy's hand flew to her mouth, her eyes wide with shock. I turned to Jack, who stood frozen, looking like he might be sick. Do you want to explain, or should I continue? The silence stretched, broken only by the distant sound of children playing, oblivious to the drama unfolding. Then Lucy spoke, her voice trembling. Jack? Is this true? Jack's shoulders slumped. He looked around at his family, at me, defeat written across his face. Yes, it's true, I'm so sorry. The backyard erupted into chaos. Lucy burst into tears. Jack's sister started yelling. His father looked ready to throw a punch. In the midst of it all, I stood, watching the family I'd been part of for so long fall apart. This was what I wanted, wasn't it? Justice, consequences, the truth finally out in the open. So why did I feel so hollow? As accusations flew and tears fell, I found myself backing away. I'd lit the match, and now the fire was burning out of control. Jack caught my eye across the yard, his gaze a mixture of anger, shame, and something else. A plea for help? I turned away, unable to bear it any longer. As I walked to my car, the sounds of the family's distress fading behind me, I wondered if revenge was really as sweet as I'd imagined. Or had I just destroyed the last chance we had at salvaging something from the wreckage of our marriage? The aftermath of the family barbecue was a whirlwind of emotions and consequences. Lucy had called me the next day, her voice raw from crying, begging me to reconsider my actions. Jack's siblings vacillated between anger at their brother and sympathy for my situation. And Jack had disappeared. For 3 days, I heard nothing from him. No calls, no texts, not even a glimpse of his car driving by our house. It was as if he'd vanished into thin air, leaving me alone with the wreckage of our life. On the 4th day, as I sat at our kitchen table, staring blankly at divorce papers Millie had urged me to have drawn up, my phone buzzed. It was Jack. Can we talk? His message read. Please, I know I don't deserve it, but I'm begging you. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, torn between the urge to lash out and a tiny spark of curiosity. Finally, I replied, Fine, our house, 1 hour. The minutes ticked by agonizingly slow. When the doorbell finally rang, my heart leapt into my throat. I opened the door to find Jack looking like a shell of himself, unshaven, eyes bloodshot, clothes rumpled. Emma, he breathed, as if my name was a prayer. Thank you for seeing me. I stepped aside, letting him in, but maintaining my distance. Say what you came to say, Jack. He ran a hand through his disheveled hair. I've been doing a lot of thinking these past few days. About us, about the mess I've made of everything. I know I've hurt you beyond words, and I don't expect forgiveness, but I want you to know that I'm ready to face the consequences of my actions. I crossed my arms, skeptical. What does that mean exactly? It means I'm willing to do whatever it takes to make things right, Jack said, his voice gaining strength. I've already called a marriage counselor. I'm prepared to come clean about everything. To you, to my family, to anyone who needs to know. No more secrets, no more lies. I laughed bitterly. And you think that's enough? That a few therapy sessions can erase years of deception? Jack shook his head. No, I don't, but it's a start. Emma, I love you. I know I've done a piss-poor job of showing it, but you're the best thing that's ever happened to me. I'm asking, begging for one last chance to prove it to you. I felt tears welling up, a mix of anger and longing threatening to overwhelm me. How can I ever trust you again, Jack? How do I know this isn't just another lie? He reached into his pocket, pulling out a folded piece of paper. Because of this, he said, handing it to me. I unfolded it with shaking hands. It was a letter of resignation from his job, the high-powered position that had been his excuse for so many late nights and mysterious trips. I'm walking away from it all, Jack explained. The job, the money, the lifestyle that led me down this path. I want to start over, Emma, with you if you'll have me. I stared at the letter, my mind reeling. This was what I'd wanted, wasn't it? Jack to face consequences, to make real changes. But now that it was happening, I felt paralyzed by indecision. I don't know, Jack, I whispered. It's a lot to process. He nodded, understanding in his eyes. I know, and I'll give you all the time and space you need. But please, Emma, consider giving us one more chance. Let's try counseling. If after that you still want to walk away, I'll understand. But I have to try. We owe it to ourselves, to what we once had, to try. I looked at Jack, really looked at him, for the first time in what felt like ages. Behind the desperation and remorse, I saw a glimmer of the man I'd fallen in love with all those years ago. Could that man still exist? Was there anything left of us worth salvaging? As I stood there, teetering on the edge of a decision that would change both our lives forever, I realized that this moment, right here, right now, was our last chance at redemption. Whatever I decided next would determine not just our future, but the very essence of who we were as individuals and as a couple. With a deep breath, I made my choice. 6 months into our marriage counseling, I thought we were making progress. Jack had been more open, more present than he'd been in years. We were rebuilding trust, slowly but surely. Then came the day that changed everything. I found Jack hunched over the bathroom sink, his face ashen. Jack? I called, fear gripping my heart. What's wrong? He turned to me, eyes brimming with tears. Emma, I need to tell you something. The words that followed shattered my world anew. Terminal illness, 6 months to a year left. He'd known for months, hiding it even as we worked to repair our marriage. Why didn't you tell me? I demanded, my voice breaking. Jack's shoulders slumped. I couldn't bear to hurt you again. After everything I'd put you through, I thought if I could just fix us first. Anger and grief warred within me. How could he keep this from me? How could fate be so cruel to give us this chance at reconciliation only to snatch it away? The next few weeks were a blur of doctor's appointments and difficult conversations. We decided to keep Jack's condition a secret from the family for now, wanting to spare them the anguish we were feeling. One evening, as I was sorting through Jack's medical papers, I stumbled upon a flyer for a support group. The pieces suddenly clicked into place. The mysterious meetings, the young woman I'd seen him with. Sarah wasn't his mistress. She was a fellow patient. Jack, I called, my voice trembling. I need you to tell me about the support group. His eyes widened with recognition, then softened with relief. As he explained how he'd been leading sessions for other patients, helping them cope with their diagnoses, I felt a shift within me. The man I'd accused of selfishness and deceit had been carrying not only his own burden, but those of others as well. Why didn't you tell me this before? I asked, tears streaming down my face. Jack took my hand, his touch gentle. I was ashamed, Emma. ashamed of my illness, of my weakness. I thought if I could just be strong for everyone else, maybe I could outrun my own fear. In that moment, looking at the man I'd loved, hated, and now found myself loving again in a deeper, more profound way, I made a decision. No more secrets, I said firmly. No more carrying this alone. We face this together, Jack. All of it. The months that followed were the hardest and most beautiful of my life. We traveled, we laughed, we cried, we made amends with family and friends, explaining everything. Lucy, initially shocked and hurt, became our rock, her stern exterior melting into unwavering support. As Jack's condition worsened, I found strength I never knew I possessed. I became his caregiver, his confidant, his partner in every sense of the word. The bitterness and desire for revenge that had consumed me melted away, replaced by a deep well of compassion and love. On our last night together, Jack turned to me, his eyes clear despite the pain medication. "Emma," he whispered, "I need you to know something. You saving our marriage, giving me this chance, it saved my life. Not in years, but in meaning. You've made me happier these past months than I've ever been." I held him close, my tears falling softly. "You saved me too, Jack. You taught me the true meaning of forgiveness, of love that endures." As dawn broke, Jack slipped away peacefully in my arms. The grief was overwhelming, but alongside it was a profound sense of gratitude. We had been given a second chance, not at a long life together, but at a deep and true connection that transcended our past mistakes. In the days that followed, as I shared stories of Jack's courage and kindness with our family and friends, I realized that our journey had transformed me. The woman who had once sought revenge now understood the healing power of forgiveness and unconditional love. Jack's legacy lived on in the lives he'd touched through his support group and in the lessons we'd learned together. As I stood by his grave, surrounded by the love of family and friends, I knew that our story, with all its pain and beauty, would stay with me always, a testament to the enduring power of love and the human capacity for redemption.